Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Dashy reminiscing on the 2024 CDL season, certainly looking back on the Seattle Surge days at the start of the season when they were breaking every single GA under the sun. Not an acceptable situation they found themselves in this year. Blacklisted from scrims, of course, in the early part of the season. Could that potentially continue onwards going into next year, given that some of that team is going to stay the same, we believe, going into 2025? What GAs might there be to be broken if this does come true? Very much interested to your thoughts and Dashy's perspective in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Plenty of things to talk about. First of all, this is always an interesting discussion really in Call of Duty on the headshot multiplier. Should we have one? Should we not have one? How strong should it be? These type of factors, because in Counter-Strike or some proper game like that, definitely a headshot multiplier makes a lot of sense, because there very rarely are basically lucky headshots, right? You aim for the head, you hit the head, you deserve to get a massive multiplier as there is in CS, like a 4x multiplier for hitting a headshot in Counter-Strike compared to hitting a body shot or somewhere else. Basically, the damage actually varies based on the various body parts, but the headshot is basically a 4x multiplier. In COD, it's never been that high, but sometimes it's been up to 1.5, 1.8 times. Now in COD it's a bit different just because nobody really aims for the head. You can, and depending on the game, you actually can try. Like in Black Ops Cold War, it was a factor where you could aim for the head, try and get a couple of headshots with the Krig. That would take your time to kill down from 5 to 4 shots. Having any higher than that, though, doesn't really seem right, just having played COD. And the players that have played COD for a long time, I think, know this to be true, that you can't have the headshot multiplier being too high because it makes the game a bit ridiculous, to be honest. Part of it is the flinch that always exists on the game to some degree. There was nothing more annoying in even Black Ops 3, I'm going to mention it again, of high caliber happening. You shoot someone and they recoil, basically they flinch up to your head and they just kill you immediately because they've got high caliber on. That was maybe a little bit unfair. So, but there's some debate on it in the community, because I think lots of the competitive players will probably tell you it's a bit more consistent just having basically zero headshot multiplier, 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, something rather marginal that maybe at longer range will take your time to kill down from 6 shots to 5 shots or something, but in close range doesn't make a massive amount of difference, because even close range, you're hip firing. You hip fire, get a lucky headshot. Do you really want that to allow the other guy to melt you so fast? I don't think that's, the best worlds to live in, really, compared to a game like CS where it is going to be more competitive inherently. So, but the casual community will probably tell you they want headshot multipliers up. The competitive community will probably tell you they want them down. So, there's always a debate on this, and it's probably never going to go away, to be honest. This was pretty interesting. I thought Microsoft laying off 650 employees, including in the Xbox and the Activision Blizzard division. This shouldn't really come as a massive surprise, but I think it's in some parts maybe an inevitability just of natural corporate restructuring right now, but also the merger in general with Activision Blizzard. When you get this type of merger, there's always lots of employees that find themselves in a bit of a limbo state where somebody that worked for Microsoft is kind of doing what they used to do for Activision. So now what do you do? And I imagine that situation has continued on some level, and now we have further repercussions. Is it going to affect the quality of the games in the studios? Maybe not in the short term, maybe in the medium term. Of course, there's always questions on that. Let's go through some more lineman cards though, because we've got up to N, so we're going alphabetically on these. Nero, this was his card this season on the Vegas Legion. A good year for Nero, to be honest. Again, definitely a player who should be in the conversations for getting an SMG spot in the league on a pretty decent team. I mean, Vegas aren't going to keep him, obviously, because they're now going down the Falcons route. Well, I mean, it's not even Vegas anymore, really. It is technically, but the organization is not the same. But Nero is a player that, I'd have thought about being linked to a team like Los Angeles Thieves. If they need an SMG, Nero could be a guy to consider. I'm not really sure if that works exactly in Crump's role, given what they need him to do for the team. But yeah, interestingly enough, Nero as well had the same kills per 10 online, on LAN, and obviously on an overall card as well. And he didn't really change that much in the grand scheme of things between online and LAN in terms of his overall numbers. They're actually pretty similar between the modes, but he was better at control on LAN, which spikes him up somewhat in terms of his overall numbers, and his damage per 10 was actually quite significantly better in both Search and in Hardpoint on LAN than online. So definitely an impactful SMG. A player that does, can, and will continue to make mistakes, right? That's how it is with Nero. That's likely always how it's going to be with Nero. But the truth is that he is a player that you can rely on to at least drop high engagements, high damage, and of all all the SMGs in the league that you should consider, Nero definitely is at least in the list of those that you might want to think about, right? So, don't know where Nero's going to go next season. Likely it's going to be somewhere, right? But yeah, won't be Vegas. There are other teams that could consider him. Of course, we're going to discuss Seattle Surge in a couple of seconds. Maybe that's something not to completely rule out. And of course, Vegas were not part, at least with Nero, of the worst ever CDL season. We've had a few candidates now. And what do you think takes the cake? I thought it was interesting just looking at the fact that there's a picture of, you know, Snoopy and Nastie and Jimbo in the background. So there are people debating that, whether, you know, which player you start. I think probably this guy gets it right. You cut the cheater, you put Nastie on the starting lineup, you bench Snoopy. But just comparing the seasons, obviously every season was different. London season in MW2 was bad. It wasn't like completely atrocious, to be fair. Vanguard Legion is going to take some stopping. 2 series wins over the course of a season. It ain't pretty, right? It ain't pretty. To be fair, Boston are a team that potentially could challenge them. They ended 6 in 27, nowhere near qualifying for champs. Broke many of Legion's records, actually, for losing streaks in terms of series, in terms of search and destroy. But they did start the year not that unreasonably. I mean, you know, they did get 6 series wins, and towards the end, they did manage to beat OpTic somehow. That was a crazy timeline, and that OpTic team went on to win champs. What a season we had in many respects. But yeah, there was definitely a period of the season where Boston were the worst CDL team that I've ever seen. But I do think the Legion take the cake from Vanguard, even just because Boston were losing so many game 5s, they at least could win a respawn. Vanguard Legion were just terrible at everything, and even if they did go game 5, you knew they were getting smoked anyway. So there was that. But let's talk about a couple of clips. This was a very interesting one, actually, from the owner of Rise Nation. Now, this guy, and just Rise in general, have been talking now for some time about getting back into the Call of Duty League. It's certainly been a big discussion around about now, given that, well, we know full well Rise are looking to get back involved. We're pretty sure other organizations are looking to get back involved. Ravens, Gorillas, they're potentially looking to sell up and get out of there, right? Whether that happens this season or not, I don't know. I'm hoping it does, because that would mean that the Poverty Orgs are gone. Even though then again, if Rise come in, if Fnatic come in, if Gen G come in, Gen G to be fair, but, you know, Fnatic, would they be paying crazy money to get some of the top players? No, but would they do a better job of roster building? You'd hope so, than some of those other teams over the last couple of years. But Rise Nation are looking to get back into the CDL. The last time they were really involved in the league was several years ago, and their best ever season was during World War II, when they won CWL Atlanta, they won Anaheim, and then they won Seattle after that. Now, Atlanta, methodz was the MVP, pretty comfortably in the end. Dominated that tournament, and methodz was, in that game, it was super AR dominated, and methodz is one of the best, certainly around that time, and he was considered as a real hot prospect. But even after that, Rise Nation decided methodz was going to go, Slasher was going to come in instead, and in hindsight, that change was probably justified. They went on to win 2 more events. Of course, they didn't win champs. methodz was then thinking about where he was going to go next, and Team Caliber was actually a very likely option at the time, which would have been really interesting to see had methodz gone there, what would have happened to TK, because they had started the season very well with Chino and Accuracy and Theory and Kenny, and they're making a couple of changes, bringing Enable into the roster, bringing Pharaoh in the end into the roster, but methodz was linked to go to that team, and apparently that deal was basically done, but Kostov, I guess the owner, didn't wire the money quickly enough, so the contract wasn't officially beginning yet, and therefore Hex, when needing a roster change with them after the Dynasty exploded, phoned him up and said, hey, whatever Kostov and Team Caliber are offering you, I'll pay you double. I need methodz right here, right now, and then they got the job done.
You know Hex, right?
In the beta.
I just remember.
Yeah, whipping his fucking god. Hurry the fuck up, man.
Mine, methodz, who's also like a big creator now, and he's still with OpTic. He called me. I had already sent this dude to another person, but the person never sent the money, so the contract wasn't void, or the contract wasn't valid. It was void. It passed like some legal mailbox date, blah blah blah, whatever. It's cutthroat in this shit, bro. He literally says, "Hey man, I don't care about that fucking signed contract. I'll double what he was paid, and I need him tonight." I said, "Okay."
Oh my god, I need him tonight. That's crazy.
And he did it. I had to deal with the backlash of the dude who made a YouTube video on it, but Cosduff, whatever his fucking name is, he's big on YouTube. He made a video about me fucking him over, saying that we were scumbags and this, that, and the third. Like,
it is what it is. It's industry.
I mean,
it is what it is.
Be real though. Am I a scumbag for waiting? And he was a week late on a payment, and I kept asking about it, and he kept saying he had to wait to go to the bank or whatever, blah blah blah. Am I a scumbag for moving on?
No, I don't mind stereo glitching though, because I know the person that's doing it is terrible.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna lie, Brezzy on Seattle is only stereo glitching me, by the way. Like someone's gotta mention this. Like,
don't worry, it's not in Seattle anymore.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Seattle is just they might as well just change their name to fucking GA because they're just breaking that shit. Like, the whole roster is just like.
All right, wait, JoeDeceives, who's breaking the GAs on OpTic? Who is it?
Ask Joe. He'll say Seattle.
Who's doing it on OpTic? Seattle.
Yeah, who's doing it on OpTic? Yeah, it's Seattle.
How the Seattle team even form? I wanted to play with Ian after BO4, so him and I were a duo, and then Jerry was on LG to end BO4, and he said he had control of the team, so I was like, yo, fuck it, let's go play there, and
they were throwing absolute
bandos around, so I said, fuck it, I'm down, let's try to build a team. And
they said, Octane, we'll give you 400. You said, no problem, let's do it.
Correct. And then I hit up Dill and Alec, and they said, bet, we're down, us 5. And then they sketched on me for Chicago on the day of roster lock. So I saw Apathy and TeamSpeak and asked them to team. And then we saw Damon didn't have a team, and that was it.
What a team.
That team was awful.
Just the world's worst.
Of course, that incredible team was formed, right, of Scump, Methods, Crim6, and Octane, which was a wild timeline. The next dynasty, of course, as many people have referred to them as. They weren't as bad, that team, as many people want to say. Like, genuinely, they were one of the better respawn teams in the game, which kind of makes sense because, like, no one was going negative on that team, really. With Crim, Scump, Methods, and Octane, like, the slaying power was pretty immense. It's just their search and destroy was pretty bad, and it was obviously a pretty rough situation, right? But funny to think about in hindsight that Hex and OpTic needed Methods, or they needed somebody, and in this case Methods, so desperately that they were willing to basically double up on Team Caliber's offer to make it happen, and it still didn't work out. They came top 24 at the World Championship, but since then it's all history, right? And now Zinni's back in that organization. The other clips, though, obviously on the Seattle Surge team, we know that those guys were in so much controversy at the start of the season. Scrappy was accusing aBeZy of using single tap sprint or auto tack sprints, which he didn't initially deny. He then did deny slightly afterwards, but people didn't really believe him because he hadn't denied it initially. They were snaking, they were stair glitching, they were doing every GA break under the sun at the start of the season, right? And everybody knows it. Dashy, of course, was cooking them for it. Funny to think that Dashy could have been on Seattle. There were rumors about this when he was dropped from the OpTic team at the start of 2023 into 2022, basically started the Modern Warfare 2 season when Scump decided to retire. Then the whole Rambo drama happens. Dashy was getting dropped. There were rumors that Dashy was heavily linked to the Seattle Surge to potentially join over there as a player, with Pred going the other way with some sort of monetary exchange. That never happened in the end, and so Dashy was never a Seattle Surge player, but it was a possibility apparently that could have been happening at the time. But obviously that was not the case, and they get roasted for breaking GAs. It was even talked about, we mentioned this at the start of January, where Ace had the information that yes, Seattle were blacklisted from practice because they were breaking too many GAs. As we said, snaking, stair glitching, was obviously one of the reasons why, but also Arceties as well. There were really no innocent parties, it seemed like, on that Seattle Surge team at the time. So funny to look back on, and also funny to wonder, I suppose, what could happen here going forwards. Because what if next season, as there will be, more GAs come into effect, as they always do. Obviously, we're wondering about sniping, but obviously snaking, stair glitching, these other factors may still be in the game. There may be some pieces of Omni movement. Damn, I actually got on the desk for this one. That's kind of interesting. But, there may be other pieces of the puzzle that need to be resolved. And maybe there's more GAs that certain players could break. I do wonder, of course, whether ROASTS is even going to be in the league, whether the likes of, the team is going to be aBeZy. He's still going to be there. 04 is still going to be there. The rest of the team, who really knows right now what they're going to form. But it's going to be, maybe even culturally, but certainly from one or another perspective, it's going to be a rather different feeling team, I think, next year's Surge than it was at the start of this year. So I don't necessarily expect that problem to continue, but very much intrigued to your thoughts, as always, and all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.